guys, welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Emily Brown and this is Emily Brown Speaks, where I provide content and information to help you be the change that you want to see. And so today I'm joined with my sister Rachel.
Hi.
Rabasat, and we're gonna have a conversation today about our hair. Recently, I posted a video to my Facebook page and my Instagram actually, discussing an incident of hair discrimination that I experienced in 2016. And all of this was really in support of the Crown Act. And so I live in Kansas, and in Kansas we have a bill before the state legislature to basically eliminate hair discrimination. This is Senate Bill 250. And so in support of this bill, I shared my experience with hair discrimination, and the response was overwhelming. This post was shared multiple times, over 62 comments, over 300 views on the video, and so it seemed to really resonate and strike a chord with so many people. And most of all, it struck a chord with my sister.
Yes, it did.
So first, let's just kind of jump into things and kind of talk about the post and kind of how it made us feel, and then I'd like to kind of dig deeper into our experience and our journeys with our natural hair. So I remember that morning I posted my photo and my comments to Facebook and to Instagram, probably like almost around like 8 o'clock, and immediately you gave me a call.
Yes.
So can you tell me, like, how did you feel? Like what was it like to read those words? Because I don't know that we actually ever talked about it before.
No, I don't think we've ever had a conversation about the experiences that we've had, but as soon as I read your post, I was like, oh my gosh, I've gone through the same thing. And not only just with, natural hair, but I would say natural hairstyles that maybe women of color wear, or use protectant styles, things of that nature. And I just was immediately like, I think this is something that a lot of people can identify with. And I was immediately like, wow, this is something so great. I'm so glad that it's at the Kansas legislature right now, and that people are working to try to change it. And I think if you actually think about it, surface level, it seems like such a minuscule issue, like hair discrimination, but in reality it's race-based discrimination. It's based on something that I feel people should not have to change, but the society that we live in and that we've grown up in, and the beauty standards that have been set before us, make people feel like it is something that they have to change about themselves. It's just to get ahead, or to be considered professional, or to be considered the norm. So yeah, I was immediately like taken aback by it, and was so happy to read it, and definitely wanted to respond. And then I realized I wasn't the only one that felt this way, that there were, almost hundreds of other people that were sharing their comments as well, and sharing their experiences also.
Yeah, and so what's interesting is I often compare this experience to many other problems and issues that we have in our society. They're always present, but they happen behind closed doors. It's hidden. So hair discrimination in most cases is not overt. Now there have been like these large cases that we've seen in the media. Recently there's you know, the teen boys in the state of Texas who, you know, one, they said he can't come back to school and can't graduate unless he cuts his locks.
Right.
I mean, so this is a, you know, this is an issue, and it's not just in the workplace, in the workforce. It's, you know,
it's society.
It's society in general, and it even impacts our kids,
right.
you know, in K through 12 schools. So it's a big issue. So I think just having the conversation, like making people aware that it is an issue. I mean, that also really struck a chord with me. How many people commented that they didn't even know that this was a thing.
It was a problem or an issue.
Yeah. So that's definitely why we need to have conversations like these and kind of really talk about our experiences, because that's what normalizes it, is like talking about it. Right. So now I've been natural for, I guess it's been a decade.
Right.
I transitioned in 2009 and then finally did my big chop in 2010, right after I got married. And so, but it took you a little bit longer to transition to natural hair. I think you've only been natural for what, like?
I've been natural since 2016.
So I'd be interested in just kind of sharing like your journey, like what led you to decide to become natural. And I can speak for myself, but I think that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah. It was something that I had been thinking about doing for quite a while, and I hesitated because of the experience that I had with hair discrimination, honestly. But it did take me a while. I decided I wasn't going to get a relaxer or, you know, put any chemicals or anything like that on my hair in 2016. So that was the beginning. And then I also did my big chop right after that in 2017. And my big chop, I wasn't really planning to do. I literally woke up in the morning, and as I was, you know, doing my hair, preparing my hair for the day, I was just like, I don't want to do it anymore. And I was literally getting ready for work. I had a little time, and I just cut off my hair. Like, straight up. Yeah, what is that? Waiting to exhale style?
Yes, waiting to exhale.
Completely waiting to exhale style. Just cut it off.
Yeah.
And I called my now wife and I was like, hey, I just cut off all my hair.
Like, what did she say?
She said, oh, okay. Like, you know, what's going on? What made you do that? Is something wrong? And I was like, nothing's really wrong. I need this change, like, right now. And, you know, I lined it up as well as I could, actually, and went on to work, honestly, to tell you the truth. And then I made an appointment at a natural hairstylist for that evening for her to shape it up, and I mean, it was fine. But it was kind of one of those now or never moments, which I live in very often. I kind of just live by that model. Once I get it in my head that that's what I'm going to do, I have to do it right away. So yeah, that's what kind of really put it in gear. And I had, because I decided to go to work immediately after that, I gave nobody any warning. I didn't specifically talk about it. I had like an immediate reaction from my coworkers and people that I worked with. So, I mean, it was interesting.
Yeah.
To say the least.
What were their reactions, and how did you process all of that?
The manager that I had at the time was just like, I like your hair better long and straight. And I said, well, I just felt like I told her, I said, listen, I just felt like it was something that I needed to do for myself. She didn't necessarily say anything wrong. She was just giving an opinion on what she has preferred to see. And my, you know, what I told her back was, I said, listen, I was like, you know, well, I don't mind that. That's your opinion. I said, but, you know, ultimately, you have I told her, I said, you have very straight, long hair. And I said, what if I told you that, you know, I didn't like it, or if I thought that it needed to change or something like that. I said, would you be offended by it? And she was like, probably. And I'm like, okay.
Right.
Where there, you know,
Right.
there's your answer on that.
Right.
And I said, I think people just need to be able to have, as long as they do look professional. If you're going into a professional workplace, and you are carrying that with you, you're dressed appropriately, you are following your dress code or your employee handbook rules. If you are doing that, your hair should not have anything to do with your performance. The way that you've decided to style it, as long as it's not distracting, because I know there are some things that people would consider distracting, and some of that would be colors of hair and things of that sort. And I can kind of understand why, those are part of dress code rules and regulations. But the hair that grows out of our natural head that God has given us,
Right.
should not be up for discussion ever.
Right.
It should be a preference of style. And if you decide you want to straighten it out, if you want to blow dry it, if you want to flat iron it, or if you want to relax it, whatever you'd like to do to it, that's perfectly fine. That's your choice. But we should have the choice to be able to wear our hair in its beautiful God-given state and still be considered, professional in the workplace.
Yeah, so kind of two things that I kind of want to talk about briefly based on what you said. I think, one, it's like, who defines professional?
Oh yeah, that's
right?
true.
Like, who gets to define that, and what is that, right?
Right.
And then two, I think you said it best when you talked about the reason it is race, like discrimination, race-based discrimination, because you can't change
what's naturally given to you.
What's naturally given,
Right.
like you can't change the color of your skin.
If this is something that you can choose to change, the fact of it is that you shouldn't have to choose to change it if you don't want to. As long as, like I said, you're carrying yourself in a professional way, and like you're saying, who gets to decide exactly what that is? You know what I mean? Like, who gets that definition?
Right. There are things
to make
like
that definition.
Right. Obviously there are things like cleanliness,
right.
and basic hygiene,
right.
grooming standards that should be considered. But obviously, for one culture to say this, the way we look is deemed professional, and anything out of that is not professional. And to me, it gets at the root of like not accepting blackness.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
exactly.
Not, like black people are the people that have this type of hair. So if we say that this type of hair is not professional in its natural state or in protective styling like braids, locks, twists.
Right.
Styles that, I think I saw an article a couple of years ago, and I'll see if I can find it and link it below, but they had earthed a mummy in Egypt and she had box braids.
Yes.
So these styles, like that's why it's really truly discrimination, because this is part of our culture. It's part of our heritage. It's part of how Black people have been protecting and maintaining their hair forever. Like forever. So
for centuries.
Yeah.
And also, I will also want to bring in the point that there are, I think, I was just going to make it kind of generalized. I think hair in general, for everyone, doesn't matter your race or color or anything, can be a spiritual experience. Mm-hmm. It is something that, and I know some people are like, I put so much thought or care on hair, but it can be a spiritual experience. And I think that also needs to be thought about when we're saying, hey, locks are not accepted for work, or locks are not accepted for school. that definitely can be a part of someone's spiritual experience. And just like, you know, the hijab for women of Middle Eastern descent, or turbans or anything like that, we shouldn't be banning those things in the workplace. I think your hairstyle that can be a part of your spiritual experience cannot and should not be banned as well.
Right. Right.
You know, also speaking on a spiritual experience, women of color, the business of hair, not even natural hair, I'm talking about just hair in general, wouldn't be as big of a business as it is if it wasn't placed as a high importance. I know that there are some women, I don't know, I can't really necessarily 100% speak for myself, but, and I don't want to generalize for, say, all women, but I would like to say that there's a great number of women who put a lot of stock in their hair. You know what I mean? Part of their self-esteem is attached to it. Mm-hmm. Part of, you know, what makes them feel good and what makes them look good, they feel, is their hair.
Right.
So, you know, I feel like, you know, asking someone to change that based on an idea of what professionalism is just isn't okay.
Yeah. Well, I also want to just briefly discuss, you know, kind of your feelings growing up as a African American girl. I know we were pretty lucky in that we always attended schools that were like pretty racially mixed, you know, like magnet schools that had like were mandated 33, to be 33. Like 33% African American, 33% Caucasian, 33% Hispanic, and then like 1% Alaska Native American, and you know, other. So I mean, I know that for me as a mother of two daughters who had, you know, who have natural hair, they wear their hair in braids like many little African American girls do, who've already, you know, in second grade experienced a little pushback for their hair being different, primarily because there aren't very many black girls in their school. So, you know, like looking back, like kind of how did you feel about hair growing up? And then I'll comment on how I felt about my hair growing up.
You know, I guess thinking back to it, because I felt like it was our norm to wear braids, to have our hair braided. I didn't think too much of it. I think we were not introduced to anything else but our natural hair until we probably got into junior high. And I think that helped shape our experiences with our hair. I don't remember necessarily getting any pushback when we were that young wearing braids. I don't think we necessarily got any huge pushback on hair until we got kind of into junior high.
What's interesting, I remember it differently. So I remember always identifying, you know, with my hair. Like I've always had a lot of hair.
Yes.
So I remember, you know, kind of identifying as the black girl with really long hair. Yeah. And so
for you.
Yeah, that was definitely part of my identity and who I was. And it did make me feel good that like I had all of this hair. I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, it was part of my self-esteem and part of my identity at the time. But I do remember, because I think we had our first relaxer in like 5th or 6th grade. I don't think it was middle school. And I remember distinctly wanting a relaxer.
I did.
Do you remember that?
remember wanting one, but it wasn't. It was based on the other African American girls. It wasn't necessarily based on my want to look like
well,
anyone
yeah,
else.
but I think it was this desire to be like everyone else. Like everyone else had a relaxer. They were wearing their hair down and out.
Right.
It wasn't in braids. Like I distinctly remember wanting that relaxer. And then when I got the relaxer, I was like, I don't really like this.
Yeah. But I think what's interesting about that is, I guess what I was really trying to say is that I do remember feeling that way, but it wasn't based on wanting to necessarily look like the standard norm, like any other race in school. It was purely big for me. It was one, if you remember that the time, I don't know, we had a little bit of it wasn't discrimination, I guess, I don't know. We had some issues in junior high.
Yes. Oh, I know what you're about to say.
We had issues in junior high.
Yes.
And there was an experience where we were in the same science class at the time, and I sat behind Emily, not directly behind her, but we were Emily, and we had long tables. I wasn't directly behind her, but far enough behind her where I could see her. And she had her hair, we had our fresh relaxer on at that point, you know. We had our hair down, you know, and we got a lot of flack. Emily got a lot of flack. My hair wasn't as long as Emily's, but Emily's was quite long. I don't think it's as much of an issue now as it was then. I don't know why it was a huge issue then for someone to be black and have a
bunch of hair.
But for whatever reason, it caused a story between the other, you know, black children, black girls that were in school.
Yeah.
And, you know, there was a girl that sat behind her and took her scissors and just, it was the smallest amount, but still decided she was gonna chop off a little bit of Emily's hair. Yeah. I could see this as it's like starting to happen, and you know, by that time I had reacted. I'd reacted, and it became something. But that whole thing in itself was a very emotional experience for the both of us, specifically for you, when you're just like, I don't even understand what the issue or the problem that you have with, what is this issue that you have with me? That also might have played a role in why the relaxer wasn't something you just wanted to continue to do. Yeah,
I do. I'm glad you brought that up. You know, I have a tendency, it's like a coping mechanism to just like forget or like not
bury
it deep in my mind, these negative experiences. But yeah, middle school is hard.
It's rough for everybody.
It's rough for most people. But I do remember distinctly feeling a lot of like reverse discrimination, like within the, like it was other black girls that just didn't like me because I just wore my hair down. I mean, I still remember, you know, I was lucky in that, like, I've never been a fighter, and like you can tell, Rachel was always the one. She was gonna fight my battle for me. But I distinctly remember like a girl saying she was gonna beat me up because I wore my hair down, and that, in her words, that I thought I was a black Barbie doll because my hair had been straightened and I wore it down. And you know, and that wasn't true. I didn't think I was a black Barbie doll. I didn't think I was any better than she was. But I think that came from her own insecurities
about her hair.
Yes. So because she didn't feel good about her hair, she had to make me feel bad about my hair. And it was this big thing. And like, it turned into like, her and a bunch of other girls were about to jump me.
Yeah.
I mean, Rachel had to step in. My mom had to come up to the school and talk to the principal. I mean, it turned into a really big deal. I mean, to the point where like every day at school, I think we sat at a table with like maybe 2 or 3 other girls, and all the rest of them hated us.
Yeah.
I mean, it was rough. But I think all of that, you know, it comes from like the society pressure to look a certain way, and this idea that straight is beautiful
or better or something,
right? And
that's right. So those girls at that specific time, because we were implementing that, you know, with the fact that we had long hair and it was straightened or whatever, and these girls, their hair had been relaxed, you know, and it wasn't necessarily long or maybe in great condition or anything at that time. And I think that their thought process on thinking that we thought that is kind of what drove all that discord. And when you're young, you can't really understand the underlayer of why those things are happening, you know, or why
what the
happening
root cause
like what the root cause actually is. You know what I mean? We also were different. I mean, and that's true. Okay. There's a stereotype that sometimes people want you to play into, and we just didn't do that. And
well, yeah, I think
that was also part of the
because black people are not a monolith, right? Like we come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, cultures. I mean, just, you know, so we didn't fit the stereotype of, you know, what I guess most of those kids deemed black kids were supposed to have. I mean, I guess we, you know, in some cases, some people thought we shouldn't have had a black card, like, you know, but yeah, like all of those issues together.
Right. But the thing is that it was a hair issue.
Yeah.
And that happened at 12 and 13.
Yeah.
So you have to, like, you know.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. It really is how it's just all connected.
Yeah. So we've actually kind of run out of time. And so I know I could have this conversation like all day. But I will go ahead and link in the comments the link to the bill in Kansas. And there's also some other Crown Act bills that are on the floor. I believe Illinois has a bill, Colorado has a bill, and I just read yesterday that the Texas Black Caucus is also looking at introducing a bill after that media story around the young teenager who may miss graduation because of his locks. So there are many ways for you to get involved. If you live in one of those states that has legislation, please get involved, share your stories, because stories, that's how we connect with each other, and that's also how we can change policy. And so if you have a story, I'd love to hear it in the comments. So comment below and I'll link all of those together. And I'll also, before this video ends, I will upload a few pictures of Rachel and I of our hair over the last few decades, kind of, so you can kind of see our hair journey. But again, please like, share, and subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Ryan Little.